Think about the number 0 for a second. Not the digit, but the idea. You see it every day. On a screen, on a receipt, in the middle of a date like 2026. It feels natural. It feels obvious. But there was a time when the human mind could not grasp it. There was a time when nothing meant exactly that. Nothing. No symbol, no number, no concept. And then, deep in the jungles of Mesoamerica, a civilization looked at the void and decided to write it down. Not as an empty space, not as a missing number, but as a shell, an eye, a seed. They built a world where nothing was not an absence. Nothing was a beginning. And they did this centuries before anyone else. This is the story of the Maya and their invention of zero. A story that changes what you think about nothing. To understand why this matters, you need to understand what zero really is. Most people think zero is just a placeholder, a circle that keeps the digits in their right place. 101, 1001. Without that zero, you cannot tell 100 from 10. But there is a deeper layer. Zero is not just a symbol that fills a gap. Zero is a number. It behaves. It has rules. You can add it, subtract it, multiply with it. And that was the problem. The Babylonians used a wedge to mark an empty column, but they never treated it as a number. They never did math with it. The Greeks were even more resistant. Aristotle argued that nature abhors a vacuum. The void was not just impossible, it was philosophically dangerous. To imagine nothing existing was to break the logic of the universe. So for centuries, the closest thing to zero in the Western world was a blank space on a clay tablet. And a blank space is not a number, it is a confession of ignorance. If you are the kind of person who gets hooked by stories like this, the kind that makes you rethink something you thought you knew, this channel digs into those hidden corners of history every week. Subscribe, and you will get the next one the moment it drops. Imagine trying to build a calendar, a financial system, or any kind of advanced mathematics without a way to write the idea of nothing. You end up with clunky phrases, words that carry the meaning instead of symbols. You end up with limitations, and those limitations shaped entire civilizations. The Greeks produced geometry that astounds us today, but they could not write the number zero. Their system of letters and fractions had no room for the empty, and that emptiness in their number system created a ceiling. They could not reach the kind of calculation that requires zero as a real participant. Now look at the Maya. They lived in the rainforest, without iron tools, without draft animals, without the wheel for transport. By any measure of technology, they should have been behind. But they built something the Greeks and Romans never did. A fully functional positional number system with a symbol for zero. Not a blank space, not a pause. A deliberate character drawn into stone. They used a base 20 system, which is already more complex than our base 10. And they used it to track time across thousands of years. Their long count calendar required them to calculate dates millions of days into the future. To do that, you need a system where the position of a digit determines its value. And to make that system work, you need zero. How did a culture without heavy industry solve a problem that stumped mathematicians in the old world? The answer lies in how they saw the world. The Maya did not think of the universe as a straight line. They thought of it as a cycle. Everything comes back. The sun sets, but it rises again. The rain ends, but it returns. The human body dies, but something continues. This cyclical view of existence created a natural space for zero, not as the end of all things, but as the pause between cycles, the moment of reset before renewal. And that philosophical openness made the mathematical step possible. The symbol they chose for zero tells you everything. It is often drawn as a shell, sometimes an eye, sometimes a flower. Different interpretations exist, but they all share something. They are not empty shapes. They are images of containers. A shell holds something. An eye sees. A flower opens. The Maya zero was never just a circle. It was a representation of a womb, a portal, the place where something comes from. When you see a Maya inscription from the 4th century AD, and you find that shell character, you are looking at a culture that did not fear the void. They honored it. They built their entire cosmology around the idea that the world begins when the previous world ends. This is where the story gets strange for modern ears. The Maya calendar famously predicted a great cycle ending in 2012. The Western world panicked. Movies were made. Conspiracy theories spread. People believed the end was coming, but the Maya did not see it that way. For them, the end of a cycle is not an apocalypse. It is a reset. The calendar reaches its highest digit, and then it returns to zero. And zero is not nothing. Zero is the moment before creation. The long count ends. A new one begins. The zero was not a threat. It was a promise. They built monuments to celebrate the completion of a cycle. They did not build bunkers. Compare that to how we think about nothing. The Western mind tends to associate emptiness with loss, with death, with failure. A zero on a bank account is a crisis. A blank page is terrifying. Silence in a conversation is awkward. We have been conditioned to fill every gap, to avoid the void at all costs. The Maya looked at the same void and saw potential. They saw the space where the next idea, the next life, the next world could grow. That is not a small difference. That is a completely different way of being human. Now you might ask, if the Maya had zero so early, why is it not in the history books? Why do most people think zero was invented in India? The answer is not about truth. It is about transmission. The Indian mathematician Brahmagupta, in the 7th century, wrote the first known rules for arithmetic with zero. He explained what happens when you add zero to a number, subtract it, multiply it. That was a monumental achievement. And because trade routes, scholarship, and eventually Islamic mathematics carried that knowledge into Europe, the Indian zero became the ancestor of our modern zero. The Maya zero, on the other hand, stayed in the jungle. It never crossed the Atlantic. It never entered the mainstream of world mathematics. When the Spanish arrived, they burned Maya books. They destroyed the records. They erased the context. So when historians later wrote the story of mathematics, they wrote the story of the knowledge that survived, not the knowledge that existed. But the evidence is still there. The Stela 18 at Uaxactun, dated to 357 AD, contains the zero glyph. That is earlier than any Indian or Chinese record of zero as a numerical concept. There are earlier Maya carvings that may push the date back even further. The zero was not a late addition to Maya mathematics. It was there from the beginning of their written history. And it was everywhere. On monuments, on pottery, in their calendar calculations. They did not invent zero once. They lived with it for over 1,000 years. Today, zero is the backbone of the digital world. Every computer runs on binary code. Ones and zeros, light switches that are either on or off. The zero is as important as the one. Without zero, there is no binary. Without binary, no computers. No internet. No modern civilization as we know it. We use zero constantly, but we rarely think about it. And when we do, we think of it as a tool, a technical convenience. We have forgotten that zero is also a philosophy. The word reset is everywhere now. You reset your phone, you reset your password, you reset your life. Every time you do that, you are echoing the Maya intuition. The idea that starting over is not failure. It is the only way to begin. What changes if you stop seeing zero as an absence? If you look at a blank space and see possibility instead of emptiness? That is the question the Maya left behind. Not in a book, not in a formula, but in a shell carved into stone 1,000 years ago. They did not know that future civilizations would use their invention to calculate trajectories to other planets. They did not know that zero would become the foundation of a global digital nervous system. But they knew something that many modern minds have forgotten, that the void is not the end. It is the place where something new can grow. The next story follows another forgotten invention, one that changed how humans measure time itself. It is about a device that was so accurate, it was kept secret for centuries. The link is in the description if you want to go deeper. So the next time you see a zero, stop for a moment. Think about the shell. Think about the eye. Think about the people who looked at nothing and saw a doorway. And if this idea makes you rethink something you thought you understood, that is exactly what the Maya hoped you would do. The next story follows another forgotten invention, one that changed how humans measure time itself. The link is in the description if you want to go deeper. But for now, just sit with the thought. Maybe zero is not a hole. Maybe it is a door.